أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين. So last time we were doing lessons. We started on the chapter of Zakat, the book of Zakat, and we talked about the basically beginning part of Zakat, how much money you have to give for. We talked about the lunar year. We talked about the nisab, which is the how much money you need to have to be eligible to pay Zakat. And we talked about the types of money and things you might have which you need to pay zakat on. So today, inshallah, we're talking about for zakat to become obligatory. So for zakat to be fard upon a person. Now the legal reason, the sabab, remember, sabab is what happened that made it fard. Okay, so the legal reason for the obligatoriness of zakat is the attention of the divine address in his words, pay zakat. So the reason zakat is fard is because Allah Ta'ala told us to pay it. So that is the reason, the sabab. The condition for it to be fard upon us are one, ownership, and that's important. Remember we talked about debts and whatnot. So ownership of the zakat threshold at both ends of the lunar year. Remember, lunar year is important. Many people, they take down the zakat dates in normal calendar, but you should be taking it down according to the lunar calendar. So ownership of the zakat threshold. So you need to own approximately 80 grams of gold at both ends of a lunar year. 2, the monetary nature of assets that have been specified for the purposes of trade due to the very nature of their invention. For example, dirham and dinar, so gold and silver. These need to exist. So the monetary nature of assets. So either gold and silver, nowadays we have fiat money. Nowadays we even have crypto money. But because people accept this as money, now this isn't a fatwa for crypto. There are many that don't give a fatwa for crypto, saying that it's nothing that you can hold, touch. It's nothing physical. Anyways, but since crypto would be a form of currency, the whole invention of it, the very nature of their invention is for trade. Yes, I'm pretty sure everyone would agree that crypto fits into this description. The whole purpose of its invention is for it to be traded between people, right? Same as gold and silver and fiat currency. It's been invented to trade between people. Yes, so all of this is monetary. That means it's money. Monetary literally just means it's money. We consider this to be money. This ruling applies regardless of the purpose for which the assets are held. So since gold and silver are money, it doesn't matter which form it takes. It could be a necklace, it could be a ring, it could be literally a gold bar sitting at your house. It could even be gold decoration in your house. Your lampshade might be made of gold, right? You still have to pay zakat on it. Even though you're using it not as money, the whole point of it is for it to be money. So just because you're abusing it doesn't mean you don't have to pay zakat on it. Now, in the case of chattel, now chattel is basically anything other than money. So that could be, you know, rice. We usually say like flour, rice. Sometimes we include animals into here, sometimes not. So, but in this instance, we wouldn't include it into other than gold, silver, monetary currency, and livestock. So we wouldn't include livestock in here because livestock has its own chapter. But in the case of chattel, so anything other than money, right? It could be you might have a couple cars, you might have a couple properties, you might have, other things that are worth a lot of money. You might have diamonds and jewels and pearls, right? There is an explicit or implicit intention to trade. Okay, so anything other than money, it needs to have the intention of trade with it. So basically, you need to have the intention to trade this thing. If you don't have the intention to trade your huge diamond, it doesn't matter how much it's worth, there's no zakat on it. Okay, an explicit intention. So we said explicit or implicit. Explicit literally means that is the reason you bought the thing, to sell it. Implicit means that you have it, but you never said that you're going to trade with it or anything, but you are trading with it. So you go to a person and you say, if you give me this, I'll give you my rice, or I'll give you 3 bags of flour, or I'll give you this diamond if you give me that car. So this is implicit. So you're not exactly saying when getting the diamond, you're not saying I'm going to flip this or I'm going to sell this and whatnot. But there is an implicit intention where you're bartering with somebody. So the intention, it doesn't matter if it's explicit or implicit, yeah? An explicit intention requires an intention upon purchasing these goods, okay? So when buying it, you have the intention, the whole reason you're buying it is to sell it, okay? So purchasing means attaining an asset in exchange for an asset. So trade, yes? You bought it, maybe you bought a diamond for British pounds. Maybe you bought flour for gold or silver, right? So purchasing means attaining an asset in exchange for an asset. So you bought it with the intention of selling it on, right? This could also be through a contract of hire. Okay. For example, he hires his house that is not held for trade in exchange for flour, for example, right? In exchange for maybe some diamonds or pearls, right? So the rent payment is diamonds, right? Whilst intending that he will sell these goods in trade. And when he gets these diamonds, why is he getting these diamonds? Because he's renting out his house and the payment is 1 diamond a month, right? Whilst intending that he will sell these goods in trade, and when he gets that diamond, normally there's no zakat on a diamond, but he intends that he will give this diamond in trade, as in he'll sell it, right? So even though what he's receiving, is nothing monetary intrinsically in and of itself, right? A diamond. But because when acquiring it, when purchasing it, now purchasing could be you bought it yourself with money, or it's been given to you in exchange for you renting out something, for example. This is also purchasing. We see both of these things as the same thing. Therefore, that diamond, because you have the intention of trade, you will have to pay zakat on its price, right? So you don't keep it around, it'll make you lose money. If one intends trade after the contract, so you bought something like a car, and then you decided later on, as normal, that you want to now sell your car, right? So it was after you bought the car that you intended to sell it, or buy something to put in his property, intending that if he finds profit, he will sell it. Okay, so there's no proper intention to sell it. He's buying something. He believes that this will go up in price. If it does go up in price, I'm going to sell it. So because this is a condition, if it goes up in price, if I find that it gained value, I'm going to sell it. Because of this, remember what we said, anything with an if or a but is not a proper intention. So we don't count this as an intention to trade it. So you can buy things with the intention that if this thing becomes more expensive in the future, I'll sell it. Then zakat is not due on that thing. Okay, so the difference here, what's the difference is when you're buying it, you're specifically buying it because you want to trade it on. you don't necessarily have to make a profit. So it doesn't like we're not looking at gross income and whatnot. If you're receiving something and your intention with that thing is to trade it on, and I say trade it on, why not selling it? Because trading can be between two different things, right? You can give a car for a caravan, you can get a caravan and give the other person some livestock. This is all trade, yeah? So we don't care if you're making money or not. We care what was your intention when purchasing that thing. Did you plan to trade it, or did you plan to keep it for yourself? Use it, eat it, just use it or keep it in your house. Or did you plan that I will trade this thing? So either what you have in and of itself is money, or you're using it as money, right? Now, an implicit intention, remember we said explicit is when you're receiving it, you intend to trade it. An implicit intention is that he barters an object in exchange for trading chattel, or he rents out his house that is held for trade in exchange for chattel. This becomes trade without an explicit intention. So what does barter an object mean? So you're literally saying to the person, if you give me that, I've got 3 bags of flour at home, or I've got a diamond at home that I'll sell. This is bartering, when you're offering something, right? Bartering. In exchange for, so you barter an object. So let's say the diamond, right? So you're saying, I'll give you this diamond for trading chattel, right? For example, that 1 ton of flour there. So for the intention of that is trading. So even though that diamond in your hand, you may have not bought it with the intention of trading the diamond, now you're planning to sell it or trade it in return for what? Something that you're going to trade, right? So you're using that to buy goods, trading goods, commercial goods, right? So you're now selling that diamond, you're bartering it, you're telling the person you'll give it to them in exchange for those commercial goods, because you plan to sell those commercial goods. So what has that diamond become? Even though you never explicitly said, I'm going to sell this diamond and I'm going to trade it, what you're doing is you're bartering it in exchange for commercial goods, which makes that an implicit intention. So there is no zakat upon, and this is why I kept saying diamond, there is no zakat upon pearls and jewels, okay? Even if they are worth thousands of dirhams, except if they are held for trading. So, like I said, you can have loads of diamonds and pearls and all these other jewels at home, but none of them have monetary value in the sense that in and of itself, it's not money. Therefore, unless you're keeping those to trade, you don't pay zakat on them. Now, a condition for the validity of the payment of zakat is an intention. So intention needs to be done when giving zakat, but that is conjoined with, so the intention has a time, there is a time frame. When do you do the intention? The payment of zakat. So when you're giving the zakat, that is when the intention is made, okay? Even if it takes the ruling of being conjoined. For example, you give it to somebody else to give it, but when you're giving it to that person, you intend a zakat. So even though by the time the poor person, the money reaches the poor person, your intention was maybe a day ago or a week ago, or maybe you gave it to a mosque to give it to a poor person and they gave it a month later, even though there is a time frame there, we say it takes the ruling of being conjoined, because when you gave it, you had the intention of zakat. So even though the poor person isn't getting it at that moment, because when you gave it, you had the intention of zakat, that's fine. Number 2, setting aside that which is mandatory upon one. So even, for example, let's say you have a pile of gold, right? You have all your money in front of you. If you remove a portion of it with the intention of this is zakat, and you split it from your other money, this intention is valid, even if that is later on given with a different intention, right? Because you split that money from your wealth with the intention of zakat, even if you gave that to your wife to hand out to the poor people, and she gave it and she told them that it's just sadaqah and she didn't say that it's zakat or whatever, because when you split that from your wealth, you had the intention, it's still valid. And number 3, if you give all of your wealth in charity, not zakat, if you give all of your wealth in charity, we also count this as an intention for zakat. This is similar to a person who fasts in Ramadan with the intention of a nafila. What happens is that nafila intention, it just turns into a fard intention because it's Ramadan. So similarly, someone who needs to pay zakat, for them to give all of their wealth in charity, which is nafila, automatically counts as their zakat, however much they do. So this is similar to that Ramadan fasting. If the zakat amount perishes after having been set aside, so you remove that zakat from your wealth, but then later on it disappeared or it got stolen or something happened, the responsibility to pay zakat is not discharged, so you need to pay again. Rather, it is discharged by payment to the needy. A poor person needs to receive it. So we count that as just a loss. If an amount was paid without intending zakat, okay, and then an intention was formed whilst the assets were in the hand of the needy person, it is valid as zakat, right? So if you gave that money to the poor person and the poor person has it in their hand, and then you thought, oh wait, I needed to give zakat, I intend for this to be a zakat, but you've already given it. But since it's still in their hands, this is a valid intention, okay? Similarly, it is valid if an intention was formed when paying one's agent, but the agent made the payment without an intention. So you gave it, for example, to your wife, or you gave it to your grown-up son, and you said, take this is zakat. And your son just took it and he gave it to a poor person without intending anything, right? We say, because you made the intention when paying your agent, that could be your son, your wife, or somebody you trust, right? Because you made that intention, even though they gave it without an intention, it's still fine. Now, if one pays zakat and names it a gift or a loan, it suffices as zakat. If one intends payment of zakat and voluntary charity, it is payment of zakat. Okay, so what does that mean? That means if you intend for it to be zakat, but because you don't want the other person to feel embarrassed, so you tell them, oh, this is a gift, right? But your intention is zakat. That's allowed. Or you can also say this is a loan, but you never intend to ask for that money back, and you intend it for it to be zakat. So basically, you're saying it's a loan just so that they take it. Once they take it, you're never going to accept the payment again. You're not going to accept that money from them because you intended for it to be zakat. So this suffices as zakat. If somebody gives the money and they say for some reason this is zakat and sadaqah, right? All of it is zakat. The needy person may not take a zakat without the zakat payer's knowledge. Okay, so we don't do any Robin Hood things. You don't steal from the rich, even if you're poor. The needy person may not take zakat without the zakat payer's knowledge, except if there are none more needy amongst the relatives. Okay, this is relatives, so this is not a random rich person, right? This is amongst relatives. If he does so, okay, so if he does take that money, right, as zakat, without the other person knowing, okay, he is liable in law. Okay, so the judge will say you have to repay it. But morally, are you liable? you're not morally liable to repay the amount. That is because that money is yours. Why? Because we say zakat is the money of the poor, it is not the money of the rich. Even though the rich are giving it, it's not their money. So when someone is paying zakat, they shouldn't feel like they're being generous. It's not your money anyways, okay? You should still feel good that you're doing what Allah has told you, giving the money, but it's not your money. And this is a lot. Some people, when I say a lot, some people really struggle with this. They struggle when giving their zakat. They feel like they're losing something. But Allah says it's not yours, it's the poor's. So it's not even your money, right? And Allah decides whose money is what, right? If he does so, then he is liable in law. The judge will say, give the money back. But morally, are you liable? No, you're not morally liable because that money is yours. Allah has said it's yours, right? It's permissible to pay zakat, but this doesn't mean you can steal, right? So you need to understand that this doesn't mean you can steal things. This is your relatives. You live in the same house, for example. This doesn't mean you sneak in that person's house or their purse and you take money out. No, this is like you live in you might have a mutual bank account or whatever, and you just take extra from there because you know his zakat day has come, and you are the poorest person among your relatives, so nobody has more rights over you to take that money, and you take it without telling them. So we don't consider this a theft. So we're not saying that you sneak into their house or you go into their stuff and you remove the money. That's not what it's saying here. Yeah. It is permissible to pay zakat to a non-Muslim subject of the Islamic State. Okay. So this doesn't mean you can pay it to a non-Muslim. You can only pay it to a non-Muslim if they're inside of an Islamic state, what we call a dhimmi. Okay. So someone there with permission, someone under the Islamic State's what's it called, protection, right? So he pays it to the needy. Okay, so you can give it to a non-Muslim so that he pays it to the needy, as what is reckoned is the intention of the instructor. Okay, so why is this interesting? Because a non-Muslim, they can't pay zakat, right? Because you need to be a Muslim to pay zakat. So if a Muslim gives the non-Muslim money to give zakat, then it says here that as if it's a dhimmi, if they're in the Islamic State, it's allowed. Why? Because what is reckoned is the intention of the instructor, the person giving the money. We look at their intention. We don't look at the intention of the non-Muslim. Okay. Similarly, it is valid if one said, this is from voluntary charity, then intended it as zakat before the agent pays the amount. So if somebody gave money, for example, to their son and they said, give this to a poor person, this is sadaqah and the intention is sadaqah. But before that money is handed to the poor person, so it's in the hand of the son, right? It's not in your hands anymore. But before your son gives it, you intend zakat. This is also valid. If the agent mixes up the zakat of his principals, he is liable for the amount, and the payments he makes are voluntary charity. This is unnes. Okay, so if the person, now this is very, very important. This is why we carefully pick who we give our zakat to, as in institutions, mosques. Just because a place is a mosque doesn't mean they're going to handle your zakat professionally and properly. We know many places that don't do wakala. We know many places that don't do it properly. But this isn't to sow doubt. This is just for you to ask 2 or 3 questions before giving your zakat. We're not saying don't trust your mosque, but ask 2 or 3 questions. How are you going to hand it out? Who's going to hand it out? Are you going to mix it all up into one thingy of money and hand it out that way? So you're going to mix up all the zakats and hand it out? How are you going to do this, right? So you ask these questions. Now, if the agent mixes up the zakat of his principals, so he gets all this money and it gets mixed up, so he doesn't know whose money is what, right? He is liable for the amount. So let's read number 50 here. that is such that they are no longer distinguishable. So he can no longer say this is Ahmed's money and this is Muhammad's money and whatnot. So he's mixed it up. He is liable for the amount. So a judge will say that he has to repay the zakat to the people, and the payments he makes, if he makes payments, okay, if he makes payments, none of it's zakat, it's sadaqah, okay. This is unless the needy appointed the agent to take possession of the zakat. If he's the agent of the poor person, not the rich person, right? If he's the agent of the poor person, so the poor person has told him to go get my zakat, right? Go get zakat from this person, then it's allowed. Or permission is found for him to mix the amounts, okay? If when giving the zakat, the people give permission for it to be combined with other people's zakats, or the two owners permit him to mix the amounts before he pays the amount to the needy, okay? Or something is found indicating permission from the owners, as is customary for wheat owners to permit mixing the payment of different produce. Okay. This ruling appears to refer to a customary practice where by a group of wheat farmers gave their respective produce to one agent to sell in the market on their behalf, permitting him to mix payments from the selling of produce. So related to this is what people gather for the powerless and needy, as it is typically customary practice. What is apparent is that the owner should know about this customary practice, so it indicates permission from him. Okay, so what does this mean? So when you're giving your zakat to a mosque, and the mosque is saying that we're collecting zakat, right? The mosque, remember, a mosque cannot use zakat on itself. The zakat is the money of the poor, not the money of a mosque, not the money of institutions and whatnot. Sorry. That money needs to go to poor people. Therefore, a mosque can't use that money on itself. Therefore, what the mosque has to do, if they're collecting zakat, they need to either have permission from you. Well, they need to have permission from you to mix this money and give it to poor people that way. Okay. If they don't get permission, it needs to be implied permission, being as the person giving the money, the zakat, needs to know that this is what they're going to do. So it needs to be permission that I know how these guys are going to hand out the money. They're going to gather it into a big pot and they're just going to hand it out that way. Right. So if you know this and you give your zakat this way, then that means that you've given permission, even though you don't say it and even though they don't ask for permission. But if somebody has no idea how the zakat thing is handled, and unfortunately that is many people nowadays, they just give their zakat. They have no idea how the zakat's handled. They don't know who does what. This isn't good, because this means that that person hasn't given permission for his zakat to be mixed with other people's zakat and handed out. So this is a problem. How we used to do it is we would have special envelopes printed, and on the envelope there's zakat, there's sadaqatul fitr, there's normal sadaqah, charity, voluntary, and there's also qurbani, so sacrifice, right? The envelope has those 4 or 5 boxes which you can tick. When you turn the envelope around, the part where you normally fold up and down, right, somewhere around there is a sentence which says, I hereby grant the carrier of this envelope permission on my behalf to give this envelope to the correct person, and also to make other people my agent. So we had that written on the back of the envelope. So what a person would do is when they're putting the amount of money in, they would first tick what it is. So is it sadaqah? Is it zakat? Is it qurbani? So they would tick that. We would tell them out loud to read what's on the back of the envelope. They would read what's on the back of the envelope. They'd put their money in. and then they'd seal the envelope. And that way, whoever carries that envelope is the agent of that person, and they have the explicit permission to get that money, and if it says Qurban on the envelope, to use it for Qurban on behalf of that person. And we ask them obviously to write their name, so their name is written there. So when the Qurban is being cut, or when the sacrifice is being done, we say the person's name. We say we make the intention that this sacrifice is on behalf of, or is Ahmed's sacrifice for the sake of Allah, or it's Abdullah's sacrifice for the sake of Allah. So we say their name, and that's how we do it. Others, they don't bother with this. They just use the implied permission. I have heard, and I do know of many mosques that they don't even take names. They just gather a bunch of money for Qurban. And they get all of that money. So let's say he gathered 100 Qurbanis, 100 sacrifices, right? He'll go to a slaughterhouse. He won't even say any names. He'll just say, I have 100 sacrifices. The guy will say, okay. He'll go into the warehouse. The guy will wait outside, and he'll get a call saying your 100 sacrifices are done. And he'll go collect the meat and distribute it. So this is very problematic. There's no wakala. You haven't even, and it's not proper. You're not ordering meat. Your sacrifice. This is an act of worship. It's not a transaction. So that's problematic. Now, okay, an agent may give zakat to his needy son. So if you're somebody in charge of giving zakat to a poor person, right? So it's not your zakat. You can give it to your son if your son is poor. If the principal did not instruct him to give to a specific individual, obviously, if your boss didn't tell you to give it to anybody else. However, if the son is a child, then the agent must also be needy. You can't give it to a child. If you're going to give it to the child, then you must also be, as in your child, you must also be needy, okay? Because a rich person's child cannot accept zakat. The agent must also give zakat to his needy wife. The agent may also give zakat to his needy wife, but not to himself, unless the principal said to him, place it where you wish, okay? Zakat is a clear obligation established by definitive proofs. It is mandatory to pay the obligatory amount immediately, and it should not be delayed to the following year. If it is not paid until 2 years have passed, one has wronged and sinned. Whoever possesses abominable or usurped assets, this is important. So if you have assets which are abominable, as in, let's not say you, but somebody is selling alcohol or pork. So they have this trade, they have commercial goods, but the commercial goods are haram. Or they have usurped assets. So the asset itself isn't haram. It might just be gold, but it's stolen. And then mixes them indistinguishably with his own assets. All right. He gains ownership of the usurped assets due to mixing and becomes liable to the original owner. What does this mean? It doesn't mean he owns it. It just means because you're unable to separate it from his own stuff, he just owes that other person that amount or whatever it was. Because normally, before all of these banks and institutions came about, a person's wealth would be literally what you're holding, right? So as long as you didn't put that into your wealth, you have to give that exact same stuff back to him. Okay, so if you've taken a shoe, for example, you need to give that particular shoe back to him, right? You can't just steal one shoe and give another shoe as repayment. But if you mix that up with your stuff, so much so that it's indistinguishable, because, we don't want to end up taking your stuff, trying to repay him back. So we don't want to end up stealing from you this time. We say, okay, you keep it, but you owe him a shoe, for example. If aside from the usurped assets, he does not have assets that reach the zakat threshold. Okay, so other than the stolen stuff, he's not rich enough to pay zakat. No zakat is due upon him. Okay, this ruling applies even if the usurped asset's value reaches the zakat threshold, even though he stole thousands and thousands, because his own money doesn't reach a zakat threshold, he doesn't pay zakat. Why? Because the money he stole is never going to be his. You don't pay zakat on somebody else's stuff. Because he is indebted, right? Because it's a debt on you, it's not yours. And the assets of the indebted are not effective as legal cause for the obligations of zakat. Okay. Obviously, unless whoever had their stuff stolen comes to an agreement or says, okay, I forgive you, you can keep it. If they say that, obviously, then that money will be his and he'll have to pay zakat on it. For abominable assets that are mandatory to give away in charity due to their true owners being unknown. So if you do have money which is haram and you're unable to give it to its original owner, or if it's just you're unable to give it to, you know, or maybe you gained it in haram means, if the possessor intends to fulfill zakat, it is fulfilled. However, it is an act of unbelief if he is hopeful of a reward for the charitable donation of assets that are definitively unlawful. So if you come into contact with haram money, as in you've somehow have received haram money, obviously if it's stolen, you have to give it back to its original owner. If you can't give it back to its original owner, then what you must do is you must give it away. You cannot keep that money. You cannot eat from that money. You cannot do anything with that money. You have to give it away. And when giving it away, you cannot expect a reward. If you do expect a reward, we say this is kufr, disbelief. Because how can you expect a reward from something Allah has explicitly told you is haram? So that is the idea behind it. You have to give it away. You have no choice in the matter, and you cannot expect a reward for giving it away. Obviously, what reward can you get? If you're doing it with the intention of tawbah and repentance, so you're giving it away, you'll get your reward for your intention and your tawbah. You won't get reward for giving that haram stuff away because it's haram anyways. You couldn't keep it. So it's not that you're getting reward for what you gave. You're getting reward for turning back to Allah and repenting. However, it is an act of unbelief if he's hopeful for if the needy individual is aware of this and supplicates for him and the donator says Ameen, they have both committed disbelief. So if the person accepting this money, right, the needy person is accepting this money and he knows this money is haram, and he says, you know, may Allah reward you, but he knows it's haram money, and the person says Ameen, they have both committed disbelief. Why? Because Allah has said this money is haram. There is no reward in giving a haram. You cannot receive a reward from doing something haram. It is valid for the one who possesses the zakat threshold to pay zakat for several years in advance. However, if you pay your zakat, for example, I calculated I need to give this much zakat for 5 years. So you give it all. I gave 5 years of zakat payments, right? I still need to check when the time comes if I've paid enough. If I haven't paid enough, I need to make up the difference. Okay. Yes. Now, zakat upon gold and silver. The zakat threshold is 20 mithqals for gold and 200 dirhams for silver. Okay. The zakat threshold for gold is 20 mithqals, which is equivalent to 87.48 grams or 7.5 toners. So at a gold price of 28.15 per gram, okay, so 28.15 per gram, which it's a lot higher today, I believe. This equates to 2,462 pounds. So if we're just going to check real quick what the price for gold per gram is. At the moment, gold price per gram in the UK in GBP is 107.94. So what you would do is you would calculate 107.94 times 87.48 grams. That will give you around 9,442 pounds and 59 pence. So 60 pence. So at the moment, that's what gold is. Now, obviously, gold goes up and down. Well, gold, we say gold goes up and down. I guess it does go up and down considering the other values also change. So you do have to check every year what the price of gold is and just check if you've got 87.48 grams of it. And for silver, this is 612.36 grams. So if we're going to check silver, so the price of silver per gram is £1.81. So you do 1.81 times, sorry, is that correct? Silver price per gram in the UK is £1.81, yes. So we times that by how many? 612.36. That comes out to £1,108. So at a silver price of 0.37 per gram, it says, this equates to £226. So what it says here is, gold and silver prices vary on a daily basis, and the current price at the end of the lunar zakat year, not the beginning, the end, should be obtained. For cash balances, the lower of the gold and silver threshold amount is used. So remember, there was a question, gold and silver. Now, if you go according to gold, it's almost 10 grand. If you go according to silver, it's slightly more than £1,200, right? So which one are you going to pick? Whichever one's lower. So we're going to go with silver. 1,000, around 1,200. What did we say? Today's price, £1,108, 37 pence. So according to silver, if you have £1,108 and 37 pence in savings, then you need to pay zakat, which is 2.5%. When determining whether zakat is mandatory and the quantum that is payable, what is reckoned is the weight, not the value of gold and silver. So when we're talking about gold and silver, not pounds, we look at the weight. Okay, we don't look at how much money you paid for this gold. We look at how much it weighs. Okay. If it weighs 87 grams, 87.48 grams of gold, if that's how much it weighs, then you have to give zakat. Silver, what did we say? 612.36 grams. Okay. Zakat is mandatory upon coins minted from gold and silver. Okay. Again, we don't care about how much it's worth. We care about how heavy it is, right? And that which is manufactured from them, including ornamentation on a sword, a belt and their like, and jewelry. You need to give zakat on your jewelry. Okay? Zakat is payable regardless of whether it is permissible to use this object. Okay? And even if it is for decoration only. So why do we say that? We are not allowed as Muslims to use gold and silver for utensils and cups and other things. You shouldn't be. So for women, you're allowed to use it as jewelry, but you're not allowed to use it as in for your cups and your mugs and other things. Okay. If you do, you need to make sure you're not touching the part and it has a reason behind it. For example, if you're using gold because of its thermal properties, you need to make sure your lips aren't touching it, your hands aren't touching it when you use it. As gold and silver were created for use as monetary currency. So basically, in Islam, we don't really mess about with gold and silver. We use it for currency. We don't use it for anything else. Now, for trading chattel, okay, so what did we say? Anything other than gold and silver and animals, right? So you got it with the intention of selling it, all right? Whose value is greater than the zakat threshold for gold or silver, 2.5% is payable. Okay, so again, what did we say? We look at the zakat threshold for gold and silver, and anything that we're trading, if it's greater than the zakat threshold, then even though it's not gold and silver, we still pay zakat on it, right? 2.5%. For each fifth of the zakat threshold, a further 2.5% is paid. Thus, 2.5% is paid upon 4 mithqal. So I'm going to read this quickly because we don't give fatwa according to this. So for each fifth of the zakat threshold, right, a further 2.5% is paid. Thus, 2.5% is paid upon 4 mithqals. What did we say? 20, right, is the threshold. But for every 4, you pay another 2.5%. What is between 1/5 and the next fifth is excused. That is, that which is above the zakat threshold is excused until the excess reaches the value of a fifth of the zakat threshold. Thereafter, all of that which is above this fifth is excused until it reaches another fifth. So you pay zakat on 20, you pay zakat on 24, you pay zakat on 28. You don't pay zakat between 20 and 24. You don't pay zakat between 24 and 28. That's what it's saying. This is Imam Abu Hanifa's opinion. Do we take this opinion? No, even though we call ourselves Hanafis. We take the opinion of Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad. They say you give 2.5% of everything. So whatever it is you have, that's what you give. And we give fatwa according to this. Why? It's a lot easier. How are you going to now sit down and calculate your mithqals and everything when you can just say whatever I have, 2.5%, give it? So that which is predominantly silver or gold takes the ruling of silver or gold. So if we're talking about the gold carats, right, there's 24 carats, there's like 18 karat gold. It doesn't matter what the carat is. Like we said, we don't care about the value, we care about the weight. This is why gold and silver is quite dangerous. I say it's dangerous. Zakat, there's nothing dangerous about zakat, but it's dangerous if you don't know what you're doing and you don't pay your zakat. That's dangerous, right? So you might buy 18 karat gold and you might think, oh, you know, because I only paid £5,000, I don't have to give zakat. But you don't realize that per gram gold value, right, is for pure gold. So even though you might have paid £5,000 for 18 karat gold, you might have bought 90 grams of gold for that money, right? Remember we said it's almost like 10k, but because you bought gold, which is mixed with other alloys, so it might be a gold alloy, as long as it's predominantly silver or gold, right? We look at the weight and we treat it all as gold, okay? So it doesn't matter if it's like only 51% gold. We count it as all gold and we take the weight of it, respectively, and it is mandatory to pay zakat accordingly. The zakat of chattel is not paid, okay? Even if he has prepared it for trade. That which is, so anything that's not trading chattel. So remember we said if you didn't buy that diamond with the intention of trading it, okay, even though you prepared it for trade, right? But because when you bought it, you never intended the trade, then you don't pay zakat on it. That which is predominantly alloy, so anything that is more than 50% something else, not gold and not silver, is valued like chattel. Okay, it's as if it's not gold and silver. So if it's 49% gold, we don't count it as gold. If it's 49% silver, we don't count it as silver. We count it as normal chattel. As we have mentioned above, intention is a condition, so to trade. This is unless gold and silver equivalent to the amount of the zakat threshold can be separated from the alloy. If it's possible to remove it, then obviously you have to remove it and pay the zakat from it. Or it is currency that is in circulation, or it's currency. So it might be 40% gold, but it's currency that is in circulation, like the bashlik. This is for Ottoman money. In these cases, zakat is mandatory whether he intended trade or not. Okay, so if this alloy that we're talking about, right, this alloy, you don't pay zakat on it. If it's 40% gold, you don't pay zakat on it unless it's a currency. If it's a currency, then you have to pay zakat on it because it's money. Now, it is mandatory to pay zakat upon coins that are exactly half alloy. So if it's 50% gold and 50% something else, you still have to pay zakat on it, even if they are not held with an intention of trade, if the gold or silver content reaches the zakat threshold. Okay, If copper coins, such as the khamsat, are in circulation as currency or are goods held for trade, it is mandatory to pay zakat on the value. Otherwise, no zakat is due. So if it's held for trade, you give zakat. If not, you don't. Okay? If the value of trading chattel does not reach the zakat threshold, it is added to gold and silver, and the value of gold is added to silver. What does this mean? You combine everything. You don't take it separately. So you don't say, oh, I never reached gold zakat, and then I never reached silver zakat. I never reached my trading chattel zakat. But if you combine it all together, it's all your wealth. If you combine it all together, you have reached it, right? So what we say is, even though you might not have 90 grams of gold, that gold might be equivalent to that 600 grams of silver. So you still have to pay your zakat, right? So if the value of trading chattel does not reach the zakat threshold, it is added to gold and silver, and the value of gold is added to silver. So you might not have 87 grams of gold, but you might have 70 grams of gold. And 70 grams of gold is a lot more expensive than 600 grams of silver. So you still have to pay zakat. Zakat falls away from the today, obviously, at this moment. That might change in the future. Zakat falls away from the recipient of a gift equivalent to the zakat threshold if the gift is retracted after the zakat year. Okay, so this is interesting. We're not going to deep dive into this, but if someone gives you a gift and after a year they take that gift back somehow, okay, you don't have to pay zakat on it. Why? Because that gift has been taken back, even though it was with you for a whole year. Because it was taken back, it's no longer yours. So therefore, you don't pay zakat on it. Neither does the person who gave it to you, because when they gave it to you, it became yours. So it's a confusing reason why. Just know that if a gift is given and somehow it's taken back, neither you nor the person giving the gift has to pay zakat. In this case, there is no zakat upon the donor either. Okay, so it says after, regardless of whether retraction is due to legal ruling or another reason. So it might just be you agreed to give it back. So the person said, I'm taking this back, and you said, okay. If you say that, and so you both agree that the gift should be given back, then you don't pay zakat, and neither does he. Okay, so next lesson, inshallah, we'll carry on with recipients of zakat. The zakat chapter in this book isn't that long anyways, so I believe we'll finish it soon. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. الفاتحة مع الصلوات.